Today we're going to talk about how to configure Tacacs authentication for users on Juniper. Now, many times users will try to log into the routers. You can have Tacacs configuration set up through a Tacacs server. So that is exactly what we are going to demonstrate here quickly. So the diagram is just demonstrating that I have a Tacacs server set up on an Ubuntu machine, and then when a user tries to log in, how the Tacacs server responds with the attributes and how the user privileges are controlled. So very simple kind of topology. Now quickly logging into the Juniper to show the configuration that is required. Now on the Juniper router, the most important configuration is this particular Tacacs server. So we have to point to the Tacacs server. So in my case, the Tacacs server IP address is this one. So I'm just setting set system tag plus server, the IP address and the shared secret that is used between the Juniper router and the Tacacs server. The next thing that is required is the authentication order. So what we are saying with the authentication order is, first I want all users to be checked against the tag plus database. If the user does not exist in the tag plus database, then I want it to fall back to the local database for authenticating users. Finally, there are two more things that I'm using here. Now I create a local user template. I would call this a template. So what is actually happening here is, for this L1 user, the UID is something you can ignore. It is automatically created by the configuration. But what really is important is, for this user called L1 underscore user, I define a class. Now the class is nothing but the privileges that is allowed to this user. Now for read only, for this class called read only, we can see we have set system login class read only configs, which is this name, and I'm saying permissions is only view and view configuration. So this particular class, which has a privileges of only viewing configurations, he can't do any further checks. Now you can see that L1 user is mapped to this privileges, right? Now, what exactly happens on the Tacacs Plus server? The Tacacs Plus server, after it authenticates a user, it is going to push back this entry from the Tacacs server. So the Tacacs will authenticate and send back this particular user, say XYZ, after his password is checked. The Tacacs will send back saying that you're mapped to this L1 user on the router. Now, when it is mapped to L1, he gets these privileges. That is exactly what happens. Now let's look at the Ubuntu Tacacs server. So I have Tacacs Plus installed, and the config file that I have is a tagplus.config file. So let me open that file. Now on the tagplus config file, what is very much important is, first we define the key. So that is the key that is used for communication between the router and the Tacacs Plus server. So here is the key. In this case, for test purposes, I'm just using Juniper as the key. So this is the key that is used or configured on the Juniper as well. Now, the next things is, on the Tacacs database, I have a user defined as read, as you can see here, and his password in this case is read321. Now here you can see the services. Here I say Junos execute local username. So when an entry is queried to the Tacacs with the username of read and the password as read21, after it is authenticated by the Tacacs, it is going to send back this return attribute saying you're mapped to this L1 user, and whatever L1 user is on the router, those privileges will be available. Now let me try to log in and demonstrate this. So I'm trying to say read. I'm logging into the box. I'm entering the password. Now see, I have logged in. You can see the username is read here. So now let me check what authorization I have for this user. So there is a command called show CLI authorization. For every user you can run this command. Now it clearly tells me that for this user called read, I am mapped to the user L1 and I have privileges of read only. So these are the things that are allowed for me, and you can see that pretty much many of the configurations are not allowed. So for example, if I do config mode, I won't be able to log in. Now let's try to check one more thing. So there is one more command on the PTX. Sometimes if you want to quickly identify the password, you have a command called request system decrypt password, and you can paste the password which is in the hex here. This works only for the values starting from 8 or 9. So just a point for you to reference. if you quickly want to identify the password. It may not work for other encryptions, but at least for these encryptions it works. So after I have logged in, I can use these privileges. Now if you want to control or give more privileges to this user, what really needs to happen is I have to change these permissions of this user from read only to super user. And if that is done, then when I log in again with the same entry, because the Tacacs is pointing to this L1 user, if he is mapped to a super user, I get super user privileges. Now we can demonstrate that as well quickly. So let's try to do that. So set system login class read only. We will say permissions all. Now here you can see I have set permissions from view. I have just included all. So when I have all, I expect all access should work for me. Obviously this will not work on the existing session, so I have to log out. Now if I log in back again, so now if I check show CLI authorization, you see I have a lot of other accesses. Now I should be able to go to configuration mode. So pretty simple to configure Tacacs and establish configurations, and also creating a Tacacs service on the Ubuntu is also very easy. Hope you find this useful. Bye for now.